The failure loop, how you are programmed to stay stuck. Have you ever been gripped by that relentless, sinking feeling? The sensation that life is not just standing still, but actively sliding backwards? Everything feels like it's crumbling, yet the underlying reason remains agonizingly out of reach. Perhaps you have tried to change. Maybe you initiated a new habit, read the motivational books, sought help, started exercising, or meticulously planned a new strategy. Yet, with a cruel, mechanical precision, everything eventually collapses back to the same point, the same crushing stagnation, the same feeling of profound helplessness, the same quiet internal echo. I am a failure. If that thought has ever crossed your mind, even whispered in the deepest silence of your own head, then this message is for you. And understand this, what you are feeling is not mere drama or victimhood. It is fiercely real, but it is not what you think it is. Aaron Beck, the pioneering psychiatrist and clinical titan of cognitive therapy, made a brutal, foundational discovery. He found that depression, anxiety, and the paralyzing feeling of failure are not primarily caused by the objectively bad events in your life. They are caused by the pre-programmed automatic way you interpret those events. In other words, the debilitating pain doesn't originate from the external world. It is generated by the cracked, distorted, and filthy lens through which you are seeing your own reality. Beck called this internal totalitarian system the negative cognitive triad, a psychological matrix that relentlessly convinces you of three things: that you are fundamentally incapable, that the world is inherently hostile, and that your future is an inevitably bleak wasteland. Once you accept this belief, everything changes. Your brain stops being an open processor and starts functioning as a disaster radar. It begins to hunt aggressively and successfully for every single sign that things will go wrong. And the cruelest part? It systematically ignores, minimizes, and rejects any evidence that contradicts its narrative. It is like living in a nightmare that you consciously recreate every single morning upon waking. You drag yourself out of the same messy room where the same distractions lie in wait. You consume the same toxic, low-frequency content. You engage in the same defeatist, paralyzing self-talk. And then you have the audacity to ask, why doesn't my life change? The answer is harsh, but it is the truth. Your failure is not an accident, it is a self-sustained ecology. You are feeding, without realizing it, the exact conditions that guarantee your perpetual failure. Your physical environment is merely a reflection of your mental disarray. Your habits are just repeated, obedient mental commands. The people you tolerate are mirrors of your internal, unresolved state. You believe you are stuck because life has unjustly blocked you, when in fact, you are the one who keeps pressing the same buttons that lock the cage. This is not a cheap motivational speech. This is an explicit call for you to look into the mirror of your own psychological mechanics without flinching. This is for those who are profoundly exhausted by feeling like a mere spectator in their own life. This is for those who have suffered enough and are finally ready to hear the truth. You are not broken. You are conditioned. And it is absolutely possible to dismantle this self-defeating loop. But to do that, you must finally confront the root of this pattern. And it is not out there. It is precisely and elegantly inside you. In the next few minutes, I will show you exactly how this mental loop forms, how it controls every major decision you make without your consent, and most importantly, how to brutally interrupt it in a practical, concrete, and relentless way. The virus, the negative cognitive triad, exposed. Imagine for a moment that your mind is not a neutral camera, but a pair of highly sophisticated glasses, an invisible, ubiquitous filter positioned between you and objective reality. Now, imagine that this filter is cracked, permanently filthy, and profoundly distorted. Every time you attempt to perceive the world, everything looks worse than it actually is. You look in the mirror and see a looming failure. You look at the world and see only rejection, insurmountable obstacles, and pervasive injustice. You dare to think about the future and can only anticipate a certainty of more pain, more mistakes, and more frustration. This is the cognitive virus described by Aaron Beck, a silent, insidious mental pattern that infiltrates slowly until it completely infects your view of yourself, your peers, and your entire existence. When this negative cognitive triad settles in, it rearms the entire architecture of your mind. Let us understand the three pillars of this internal tyranny. Internal tyranny, the negative view of the self. This is the automated voice that functions as your self-appointed inner critic. It screams, "You are not enough. You are intrinsically flawed. You always inevitably mess everything up." This voice often sounds completely rational and factual, but its power is fed by distorted, toxic beliefs internalized over a lifetime, perhaps since early childhood. With every tiny mistake, every perceived rejection, every unfair criticism, you are unconsciously reinforcing the catastrophic idea that something deep within you is fundamentally wrong, deficient, or broken. The hostile lens, the negative view of the world. Once your internal self-tyranny is established, you are forced to perceive the world as a hostile, unfair, and profoundly indifferent place. You begin to believe, with utter certainty, that nothing will ever go right, that the universe is actively working against you, and that everyone else possesses luck, advantages, or privileges that are eternally denied to you. Life stops being a journey and becomes an unequal, exhausting struggle. You become trapped in a self-imposed echo chamber where you only see confirmation of your fear. Future paralysis, the negative view of the future. This is the ultimate point of the triad, the absolute conviction that nothing will ever improve. You are paralyzed by the thought that no matter what colossal effort you expend, the outcome will always be the same: frustration, collapse, and pain. You stop trying to progress because you have successfully convinced yourself that the attempt is meaningless. The internal justification is simple and paralyzing. Why change if I know the outcome is predetermined to be failure? This thought drowns any spark of hope or progress. The crucial mechanism. These thoughts are not mere passive reflections of reality. They are active, automatic, and aggressive interpretations. Beck discovered that these interpretations arise so quickly, so frequently, and so naturally that you never realize you are having them. They become the constant background hum of your consciousness. You do not question them, you accept them as reality. And that is precisely where the cognitive virus strengthens its grip. This system creates a dense lens of cognitive distortion that over time aggressively reprograms your brain to seek, notice, and meticulously store only what confirms these negative beliefs. You could have 10 objective successes, but your memory will only retain and replay the one thing that went wrong. Someone may offer you genuine praise, but you will obsessively fixate on the single slight criticism that came afterward. And when something genuinely good occurs, your internal tyrant immediately whispers, "It won't last. Don't get comfortable." This pattern is insidious and relentless. This is why so many people feel permanently stuck, even when they are desperately trying to change. You are not reacting to reality. You are reacting to your distorted, pre-programmed interpretation of reality. And this distortion has become the single defining script of your life. This internal programming extends far beyond mere thoughts. It dictates how you act, how you decide, who you associate with, and even the type of environment you tolerate around you. It silently programs your behavior to actively sabotage your own life, reinforcing the cycle of failure without your conscious awareness. The confirmation bias, your brain as your pursuer. Now that you understand how the negative cognitive triad distorts your perception, we must delve deeper. This distortion doesn't just change how you feel, it aggressively shapes what you expect from life, and what you expect defines what you are capable of seeing. Aaron Beck identified a devastating phenomenon that permanently accompanies the cognitive triad: the depressive confirmation bias. It is as if your mind has become a personalized surveillance system, tirelessly, relentlessly hunting for everything that conclusively proves the core belief. You are a failure. It is a uniquely cruel internal process where your brain becomes its own pursuer. Let me be absolutely direct. When you believe deep in your core that nothing ever works out for me, your brain activates a powerful unconscious mechanism that filters reality into a single negative narrative. It highlights only what confirms the belief. When something inevitably goes wrong, the internal tyrant snaps, "See, I knew it, proof of my inadequacy." It dismisses positive events. When something goes right, the mind immediately replies, "That was just luck. It will go wrong again soon. It doesn't count." It misinterprets neutrality as rejection. A simple, neutral event, like someone not responding to a message immediately, is instantly interpreted as deliberate, crushing rejection. Not because it was, but because your programming expects it to be. This bias is not a simple judgment error. It is deep, fundamental emotional programming, and it fundamentally impacts your behavior. When you are convinced you will fail, you act like someone who will fail. You try less, you hesitate more, you engage in micro-sabotage, you enter the attempt defeated, and when the bad outcome inevitably arrives, the entire cycle is catastrophically reinforced. I tried, and I failed. So I really am a failure. This is the cruelest paradox of the depressive bias. It turns your predictions into powerful, self-fulfilling prophecies. And you, without conscious awareness, begin to adjust the entire architecture of your life to confirm the toxic identity of a failure that you believe you possess. This sabotage transcends major decisions and reaches the level of your most mundane daily habits. You continue to wake up in the same disordered, messy environment. You continue to relate to the same energetically negative people. You repeat the same daily rituals that feed your inertia and stagnation. Not because you enjoy it, but because a deeper automated program inside you expects nothing to change. You are not passively waiting for a new life. You are unconsciously preparing to repeat the exact same script. You ask yourself, why don't I change? But you are relentlessly feeding, day after day, the exact context that keeps the failure identity alive. In this state, the brain becomes a master at rationalizing your psychological prison. It floods you with commands. It's too hard. I don't have the energy. There's no point in trying now. I am already defined as this. These phrases are not neutral observations. They are unconscious commands. Every time you repeat them, you reinforce the internal sabotage system and strengthen the identity that screams, "This is the best you can ever have." That is why genuine, lasting change does not begin with a wave of motivation. It begins with a brutal act of breaking away from your current ideas, your current habits, and your current environment, even when you feel profoundly unready. If you wait to feel fully prepared and motivated within this self-defeating mental system, you will never, ever act. You need to dismantle the foundations. The environment trap, the ecosystem of failure. You are not just trapped inside a mental loop. You are surrounded by an environment that ruthlessly feeds this exact cycle. Listen closely to this terrifying truth. It's not just your mind that is programmed for failure. The environment you physically inhabit, the people you associate with, and the habits you repeat, literally everything around you, is conspiring to keep you exactly where you are. And the most terrifying part? You are the one who signs off on this conspiracy every single day. Aaron Beck was clear. Negative thoughts do not exist in glorious isolation. They demand coherent actions, and those actions construct environments. What you feel shapes what you do, and what you do shapes the world you live in. When you are immersed in the core belief, "I am a failure," you begin to unconsciously organize your reality to confirm that belief. Let's apply the mirror test. The physical space. You wake up, and the first thing you perceive is the same messy, disordered room. Clothes scattered, bed unmade, a towering pile of objects you desperately pretend not to see. What does this powerfully communicate to your psyche? Not order, not clarity, not control. It screams disorganization, stagnant weight, and total inertia. The physical chaos around you instantly becomes a mirror of the internal chaos. And what is your response? Nothing. You tolerate it. You normalize it. The social space. Now, look at the people who consume your time. How many of them genuinely inspire you? How many challenge you to grow beyond your current limitations? More importantly, how many are perpetually complaining, locked in victimhood, mired in the same tired stories of defeat that you are desperately trying to leave behind? If you spend your days surrounded by voices that reinforce mediocrity, how do you expect to build a belief system that believes escape is possible? The digital space, the content you consume, the endless scrolling on social media, the videos and comments you passively absorb. What is this feeding into your mind? Clarity, focus, or comparison, judgment, distraction, and overwhelming rumination? The truth is unforgiving. You are meticulously reproducing the perfect, self-sustaining conditions to remain utterly stuck. You have created, without realizing it, a perfectly calibrated ecosystem of failure. And as long as this toxic system is functioning, any brave attempt at internal change will be systematically sabotaged. You might try to think differently, but if everything in your environment, your room, your phone, your friends, remains aligned with the old identity, your mind will violently pull you back to the prior coherent pattern. Why does this happen? Because the human mind prizes coherence above all else. It demands that your thoughts, your behaviors, and your environment are aligned and consistent. If the external environment is still perfectly tuned to the identity of the failure, the mind will ferociously resist any new idea that breaks that pattern, even if that idea is the cure. Therefore, let us be realistic. You will not escape this psychological hole simply by thinking positively. You must initiate a controlled demolition of the cycle's foundations. This starts with a conscious decision to change, even when your mind is screaming. It's pointless. It requires a brutal act of interruption, ruthlessly eliminating what holds you back, silencing the negative voices, and breaking the automated routine. Your environment is not just a reflection of your internal state. It is the most powerful lever for your transformation. Change the environment, and your mind will be forced to change with it. But beware, simply changing the environment is insufficient. If you don't simultaneously attack the corresponding thoughts and behaviors, the cycle will inevitably recreate itself elsewhere. Beck's powerful mandate was this: real, enduring transformation happens when you intervene on 3 levels at the same time: in the mind, in action, and in the external world. The turning point, the triple intervention. We have now reached the crucial turning point. You understand the conditioning, the negative filtering, and the environmental structure that keeps you trapped. The urgent question is, how do you break this cycle definitively? Aaron Beck provided the answer: But it is not comfortable. It demands a brutally direct approach, a simultaneous, uncompromising break on 3 fronts: thought, behavior, and environment. This is the triple intervention. It is utterly pointless to tinker with one point while ignoring the others. It is like trying to extinguish a massive fire by spraying water only on the edges. If you want true, permanent transformation, you must attack everything at once. The mind. Cognitive surgery. The ruminative mind is a psychological minefield. Negative automatic thoughts, ANTs, arise in fractions of a second. You won't succeed. No one cares. It's better to give up. The problem is not the thoughts themselves. The problem is believing them. The intervention begins with identification. Take a dedicated notebook and start writing down the thoughts that arise when you are frustrated, down, or anxious. Then initiate cognitive surgery. Ask yourself, is this strictly true? Is this a fact or a distorted interpretation? What objective evidence do I have to support this belief? This simple act begins to untie the complex knots that these automatic thoughts have created in your identity. Beck called this cognitive restructuring. It is an active, aggressive process of confronting your deepest beliefs with the cold, unyielding light of reason. Behavior. Action. First, feeling later. Here is the most overlooked truth by those suffering from stagnation. You do not need to feel like it to act. Motivation is a high-level luxury that almost always appears after you have initiated action, not before. If you wait to feel motivated to change, you will wait forever. Therefore, you must change even without the desire. Start small, but start. Get out of bed and instantly tidy one section of your room. Go for a brisk 10-minute walk. Put on clean, intentional clothes, even if you are staying home. Respond to that single, long-avoided email. No matter how insignificant the action seems, each concrete movement is a profound message to your mind. I am no longer a hostage to this identity of failure. Action first, feeling later. This new behavior begins to generate a new, nascent emotion, a sense of small competence. Environment. The radical cleanse. No more negotiating with chaos. Your house, your room, your daily routine, your social circle, all of this is actively conditioning you every minute of every day. Clean up, literally. Grab a massive trash bag and ruthlessly eliminate everything that symbolizes stagnation. Piled up papers, clothes you don't wear, objects that remind you of a past you want to leave behind. Create aggressive order where there was once paralyzing disorder. Digital disarmament. Unfollow every profile that makes you feel inadequate or feeds distraction and comparison. Create a space, physical and virtual, where the powerful, functional version of yourself can live and thrive. Remember, you don't need to feel that you deserve a new life to start building it. You need to build it to start feeling deserving. The triple intervention is like aggressively reprogramming a massive operating system that has been thoroughly infected by years of toxic thoughts, passive habits, and paralyzing environments. It is not comfortable, but it is the only way. You don't need to change everything at once. You just need to start. One questioned thought, one concrete action, one cut in the environment, one per day, but with brutal, unrelenting consistency. The arsenal. Tools for cognitive warfare. You have understood the problem, identified the root, and comprehended the toxic structure that keeps you trapped. But knowledge without immediate, consistent action is simply another paralyzing burden. Now is the moment for movement. You need simple, direct, and relentless tools that you can apply today, even when you feel weak, unmotivated, or hopeless. Cognitive surgery, the 5 whys of belief. Take a negative thought. Nothing ever works out for me. Now relentlessly apply the 5 whys. Why? Because I always fail at the last minute. Why? Because I'm not intrinsically good enough. Why? Because people consistently reject me. Why? Because I feel inferior and unvalued. Why? Because since childhood I learned my presence had no value. You dive directly down to the core belief, the emotional root that sustains the entire pattern. Once you expose it on paper, it immediately loses its power to run on autopilot. Do this in writing. What is in your head is fog. On paper, it becomes a map. The Cognitive Distortions Journal. Dedicate a page each day to noting your automatic negative thoughts and T's, and crucially, classifying the distortion involved. Nothing ever works out for me. Generalization. If she didn't respond, it's because she hates me. Mind reading. I made one mistake, so I'm a total failure. Negative labeling. This exercise rapidly teaches your brain to recognize the trap before you fall into it. Beck insisted, you must learn to see your thoughts as mere hypotheses, not as absolute, unchangeable truths. The 2-minute rule, behavioral fire starter. If any task can be done in 2 minutes or less, do it now. Get out of bed, take a shower, reply to a quick message, organize one small corner of your space. Do not think, do not negotiate, act. This movement, however small, is the essential spark that generates energy in a depressive state. The replacement strategy. Train your brain to change its response pattern. Trigger. You feel the urge to drown yourself in negative social media. Response. Set your phone to block the app after 10 minutes and instead listen to a brief educational podcast. Trigger. You feel the inevitable cycle of comparison. Response. Use that trigger to write down 3 personal achievements from that day, no matter how insignificant. Environmental detox. Cutting the poison, grab a trash bag and initiate a detox from failure. Remove torn clothes, broken objects, accumulated papers. Clean your desk. Make your entire physical space feel breathable. Then aggressively move to the digital realm. Mute. Unfollow. Block everything that drags you down. Not out of hate, but out of absolute non-negotiable survival. Cut without guilt. If you are around someone who consistently pulls you down, reduce exposure. If you cannot cut them out entirely, limit their influence. Create massive emotional distance. Remember, you are not obligated to maintain relationships that actively destroy your sanity. Toxic people are an energetic black hole. The minimal reconstruction routine. Adopt a strict daily 3-block routine. Mental block. Write down 1 thought you want to weaken and 1 thought you want to strengthen. Physical block. Perform 1 concrete action that moves your body, even just washing the dishes or climbing the stairs. Environmental block. Make 1 small aggressive change in your space. Remove, clean, organize, destroy. Do this every day. And in 30 days, your mind will start to react differently, not because the universe conspired, but because you finally stopped conspiring against yourself. The final battlefield. Sustaining the break. You now have the tools, but the internal saboteur is cunning. What if you lose the strength? What if the chaos returns? How do you sustain this change? Change is difficult, but standing firm against the internal saboteurs, that is the true battlefield where you finally strengthen yourself. At this point, you understand that the feeling of failure is not a true reflection of reality, but the result of a distorted, invisible, relentless mental mechanism. An invisible programming that shapes your perception, filters your experiences, paralyzes your actions, and recreates the same emotional hell daily. And here is the hardest truth to internalize. Until you make a brutal, uncompromising decision to sustain the break, nothing will fundamentally change. You can keep consuming content. You can perfectly understand Beck's cycle. You can repeat catchy phrases, and tell yourself that one day it will get better. But as long as you keep allowing the same self-defeating thoughts, maintaining the same passive habits, and living in the same chaotic environment, you are, consciously or unconsciously, feeding the failure you claim to hate. Aaron Beck taught us that it is insufficient to wait for change to happen. You must aggressively create it and sustain it, even when you don't feel like it, even when everything inside you screams to surrender. The life you truly want will not simply fall from the sky. It will be born the moment you finally stop recreating the scenario of your own ruin and summon the raw courage to dismantle, piece by piece, the identity you built on years of pain. Is that hard? Yes, but it is profoundly, absolutely liberating. Because if you created the cycle, you are also the only one who can destroy it. You don't need to become someone perfect. You don't need to solve everything at once. What you need is to make one radical, definitive choice. To stop living on autopilot. To stop believing you are your failure. To stop waiting for the right moment to change. Because that moment will never, ever come. If you've made it this far, there is an undefeated part of you that still wants to fight. That part deserves to be heard. More than that, it deserves to be obeyed. Start now. Comment below. What point in this video confronted you the most? What gave you that initial spark? What concrete action do you know you must apply tomorrow morning? If this message has awakened something powerful within you, do not stop here, because the next video is also essential. Each piece connects, each idea builds a foundation. Keep watching, keep rebuilding. Let's continue this journey together.